Welcome to the Anklers Art and Crafts Podcast, presenting peer-moderated conversations about the careers and contributions of the talented artisans who work behind the scenes on the TV series and movies we love. I'm Christopher Rosen, the Anklers Deputy Editor, and I'm so happy to bring you a series of conversations with some of this season's most celebrated Emmy nominees in cinematography, editing, production design, visual effects, and sound that we recorded at the American Society of Cinematographers Clubhouse on August 7th. Hosting today's episode on cinematography and sponsored by HBO Max, Universal Television, and Apple TV Plus is James Whitaker, ASC. James is known for his work on Hawkeye, Patriot, and Thank You for Smoking. He sat down with two of this year's nominated directors of photography, Adam Bricker, ASC, a nominee for Outstanding Cinematography for his series Half Hour for HBO Max's Hacks, and Jessica Lee Gagne, a nominee for Outstanding Cinematography for a series 1 hour for Apple TV Plus's Severance. James, take it away.
All right, it is a vibe here at the ASC Clubhouse today. A sweaty vibe. All right, we got 4 Emmy nominations between these two people. Incredible. Thank God they're in different categories and we may have to separate them. I want to talk about the clips, but I want to talk about something else first, which is the fact that there's some true commonality between the two of you in these shows. Both of you set the looks on previous seasons of these incredibly gorgeous, incredibly high-end, much-loved TV shows. And I guess the question is, why do you come back? Is it because you just missed the Grip and Electric team? Is it because of the success of the show, or is there something deeper that you really wanted to explore as far as the cinematography goes? Can you want to take it to a different place, or what might it be? Adam, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thank you guys so much for coming. This is so fun. Yeah, I think it's all of that.
I was going to say all of the above.
Yeah, all of the above. I mean, I think, I've been so lucky. I shot the pilot episode of Hacks. I've shot every episode of Hacks. And I've just been so fortunate to be able to continue on this journey with, I think it's about the collaborators. It's this team that you work with, that you're there every day. And just like, you have ownership as a cinematographer over the project. And I'm in love with the characters and in love with the script and want to see the story to its ultimate conclusion. So I'm just really fortunate to be able to do it. I don't know, why do you keep coming back?
For me, it's so different because I didn't want to do it at first and I didn't want to come back for season 2. So I know it sounds horrible, but there's backstory. Originally an office show, right, is what was brought to me, and I didn't know what Severance was going to look like. None of us really did. But as a DP, you like to be able to light. You like to be able to, shape things, and white hallways and white, it was written in the script that the ceilings were low in MDR. So, all the things that you just don't want to do. But it made me push myself to find ways to make it beautiful in the cinematography. Also collaborating with the production design team, which on this show are amazing. And yeah, it was like finding new ways to make things interesting for cinematography. So I think the challenge is what was interesting. And then also I kind of went on deep dives of photography, office photography, and really developing like the office language. And then season 2, I didn't know what season 2 was going to be about. And I felt like I had, had my fair share of MDR and the white hallways. So I wanted to do something new. I always redo, I don't know how you are, but I can't stand lighting a scene the same, like a set the same way twice. So there was a lot of challenges in this. And when I read the synopsis for season 2, I saw how the world was expanding, so that got me excited, and then I got the opportunity to direct, and episode 7 is the one I just gravitated
towards.
Direct
an amazing episode, by the way. Just let's say
Thank you.
Incredible.
I think that there is though a lot of pressure to move on from a project. I don't know, you felt this obviously after the first season, and I don't know, I think when you find a project that's so special that it's worth committing the time to, that you want to sort of continue on the journey. And you're right, I think the fun of for you of creating the look of season 1 of Severance, same thing on Hacks, and then being able to play in that sandbox again and sort of evolve the look and play with the rules that you've established. I really find that very rewarding.
So were there things that you were just like, okay, I'm going to be able to push it? Or were there people as part of your team, your directors or showrunners that were like, I want you to push it further, or you're going to have this set piece this year. Does that excite you? Or some piece of technology?
I was pushed by Ben to make it more beautiful in season 2. He was like, we need to make it look better.
Wow. Okay.
Okay, can we change all the sets? No, I don't know. The sets are amazing, so you don't want to change them. But
how did you take that?
A little flustered at first. I think I was a little annoyed. I was like, what are we supposed to do? But then we got an updated camera. The Venice 2 came out. We also worked and tried to push the language further. There were all these new worlds that kind of got us to go there. And it was subtle things. We couldn't completely revolutionize the look. I think that would have thrown people off. But the show has a little bit more of a commercial touch, even in the cinematography this season. I did try to light more in the offices, and that was not good. So the sets are so well designed in terms of lighting that every time I would try and add light or change things, it just looked weird. Also, because we got so used to what it already looked like. So there was going too far and then coming back.
Well, it looks fantastic. It does. How about you, Adam?
Yeah, I think, the look was sort of designed based on Deborah Vance's heyday. And so it was sort of this vintage look that was modern because it was contemporary, but everything was sort of structured around her life in Las Vegas, these grand casinos, her huge theater, and the challenge of taking that look that we'd established and applying it to new locations as the world developed. I mean, there was one season that was set, largely on a tight tour bus, trying to figure out how to maintain visual continuity from the theater to that. And then now with this season, which is set in late night television, I think that's been a really fun exercise.
What are your favorite parts of the show to shoot? I'm guessing the shows.
You mean
you mean
for
me?
you,
Oh,
for
yeah.
you, Adam, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. The late night was really fun to shoot. Sort of that, I don't know. I think working with Rob Tokars, who you guys just heard from, to sort of draw visual parallels between her life in Las Vegas and what we'd seen prior and sort of subtly introduce those cues into the late night set. I think that was really fun and felt very cohesive. Honestly, really any scene with Gene Smart and Hannah Einbinder is a thrill to shoot. They're so talented, and you do all of this prep and you're pre-visualizing what it's going to look like, and then you're trying to execute it, and then you put on the context and you watch the performance, and it all sort of just washes away, and it's so funny and beautiful and great. So,
and do you do all of the programming for all the live shows yourself internally with your team, or do you farm any of it out to lighting designers?
No, it's all internal, and then these days everything is on a digital lighting board. So there's obviously you're doing a lighting board for the late night show, and you have all these visual cues, but we're doing the same thing when we're backstage or in Deborah's living room. everything is on a board and able to dim up and down, and things have come so far.
I know, it's amazing. I love that. I wanted to ask you also about, I truly admire how you handle the close-ups, especially of the women. I think it's incredible. Do you have a go-to technique? Do you have some specific tools you like to do?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, the Gene Smart.
Yeah, exactly. Gene Smart, Carol Burnett. I mean, come on.
She's, Gene is just so,
I see.
So stunning. So I reject the premise of the question. I think, Gene Smart's eyes have done more to further my career than any technique that I'd have. I don't know. It's, I think what it is for me is about establishing a lighting design that is representative and worthwhile of this character, Deborah Vance. And so, like I said, it's vintage, it's from her heyday, looking at a lot of old references, how actors and performers were lit back in the day, and sort of trying to replicate that and introduce that naturally into a modern world. But then I think sort of the trick of it is that you have to be really hardcore about the continuity of that lighting design across all scenes with all characters. I watched a lot of films going into that first season where you would see a certain actress lit a certain way or with a certain filter, and that to me was sort of giving away the game. You were sort of noticing that there was some glamour lighting occurring. So I think the name of the, for me, it's just being consistent across all the scenes so that it all sort of weaves together seamlessly and you don't even notice the lighting. It becomes the visual language of the world.
Right. And that's very apparent in this clip, I feel like, where you take her from backstage and out into this world.
Yeah, I mean, it's easier to do it when Gene is hitting a mark and delivering a brilliant piece of dialogue, and you can have 3 book lights in a cove, and we have like a go-to, Deborah Vance lighting look. It's harder when she's on the move, and you have to work, honestly, like so much of the lighting in that oneer is Rob Tokar's, and him building these integrated lighting components with our gaffer that help you kind of move her from all the way backstage all the way onto the main stage there. So it's quite the feat. Oneers are fun.
Yeah, they sure are.
The whole team like gets together. I mean, your oneer is absolutely incredible. I hated following that, but the I don't know, the whole like vibe on set, like everyone is, you've set it all up, you've rehearsed it a bunch, and then everyone's thrown their contacts on and they're on the monitor, and there's a big cheer when you get it right. It's like all the departments coming together. It's just a great camaraderie on set when you're doing something like that. I love it.
There's always some extra energy on set when you're doing a oneer because everybody becomes that much more focused, and including the actors. And it's really exhilarating. So congratulations.
Yeah,
the work looks so glitzy and glamorous. So I'm jealous. Well done.
Thank you so much.
Jess, let's talk about your incredible not oneer.
Not a oneer.
Not a oneer. But it did look like you guys shot for about 190 days, I think.
Yeah.
So that was about half of that? Was that about 100 days?
I mean, there was a running unit. It was split off into several days of shooting just because of, what people don't really know is how our sets are built. We have 5 stages, and there are pieces of hallways in different stages. Like around MDR, we have 2 full sequences, I don't know what to call it, like full sequences of hallways where you'll have like a little area that we call the donut, and then there's like the white hallway, and we name our hallways because they have different configurations. And if you want to do the crossroads, well, that's on another stage. So the first part of that was just figuring out what part of the hallways we used, and then what that was going to look like was done with previs. And then we broke that down to understand how to actually shoot it technically, because there was like a lot of challenging desires in that. And it's less of that performance where, everyone kind of gets together and knows that they have to make it work. And there's like someone hiding with a light in a corner, and they like pop out for a second and then they go, that's so beautiful. It wasn't really
You guys
that.
weren't all cheering when Adam was running on the treadmill?
Oh, no, I mean, with that, the part where the camera like whips around him when he's in the crossroad, that's the crossroads hallway. That was impressive to see. And also just seeing him like move with this huge tool. And it's honestly extremely scary to be around that thing. But he really crushed it. I feel like he's the most impressive thing about that shot.
I assume you don't put that at the front of the schedule. Like that gives a lot of people time to get ready for it.
Well, the challenge so I think I always forget, and every time I tell myself I'm going to like remember how many parts there are, it's between 13 and 16. We would schedule it on different days at different, so that he wouldn't do a bunch of pieces on one day. And then also it's like, you don't want him running and then having to go do some other scene where he needs to be in a different headspace. So the challenge of scheduling that was interesting. Not only just changing the sets around, because yes, we have hallways on different stages, but the hallways change and morph. One day you're going to go into work and you're shooting a scene in MDR, and you're going to go in through the way you're usually, usually you turn left, right, and you're at MDR, but that day they changed the wall for another scene for another unit, and you have to backtrack and go back and go another way. It's a maze.
It is a maze. So the beginning of that sequence starts with one of the transitions from Audi to Anyworld, right? Mm-hmm. Which is a very well-known effect, right? Some people call it the vertigo effect or dolly zoom or a
called the Zolly.
The Zolly, okay, there we go.
We have a bunch of names for the different kinds of Zollies on the show.
It's so seamless every time you guys do it. I just wondered, are you doing it for real with the dolly grip, or are you doing it motion control or bolt?
Well, it was a whole process figuring it out. And the idea came from our Innie optical language kind of converging with our Audi world, which is longer lensing. So in the Innie world, we tend to be a little bit wider, kookier. So it was, how do you in this transition go from one to the other? The Zolly is like the perfect thing, right? And it's also changing the perspective on them. But in terms of doing it, the first times we like the first thing I was thinking to bring it to life was the bolt, and we did do it with the bolts, but it wasn't as smooth. There was like a little bit of shakiness to it. I don't know if it's because we hadn't spent enough time really refining it with that tool. And then we ended up we worked with a motion control specialist in New York called Anthony Jacques, and he kind of developed his own software for it and made his own motion control system. And it was just like laser based basically, and it was on a dolly on a piece of track, and it was very, very simple. It looked like nothing. But yeah, it's all programmed and made by him, and we just always use the same zoom lens, and that's what it. But there is like cleanup on it, and there is things that we kind of refine and post a little bit. But yeah, it's very simple.
I was going to say, I assume you're working very closely with visual effects as well.
The entire show is done very closely with visual effects. I think when you look at Severance, it looks simple. Well, maybe not that shot, but like it's just office white walls, right? But we're so meticulous about everything, and the visual effects department is as well. Like, there's cleanup, there's making sure everything is perfect. This isn't interesting, but we deal with like climate things in our stages sometimes where like the floors are no longer level, and then you have to try and, things are buckling and shaping, and, everything is cleaned up and very precise.
I watched Jess's directorial debut last night, episode 7, and there's nothing simple about the cinematography of this show. I can tell you that it's absolutely immaculate and amazing, and the directing was incredible. And you guys this time started mixing in some film. Was that a choice from above? Your choice?
It was my choice. Originally, we did have the conversation about, are we going to do film or are we going to do digital for Severance? In my mind, it really was a digital film, just for like that feeling, that kind of coldness to it a little bit. And when the idea of memories in the past before being severed, like what does that mean? What does that feel like? What was Mark's experience life like before? Film was kind of the obvious choice. We're really lucky we got to do it. And we kind of had to simplify a little bit of the way we work to be able to get that done. But there's no more natural way to feel the past than film. When you look at film subconsciously, you're kind of thrown back into the past, especially when you don't manipulate it too much or when you don't light too much, then it really kind of retains that quality. I don't know if you face this thing, but flashbacks are always kind of daunting as a DP. Like, oh no, I have to do flashbacks. Like, what am I going to, I'm going to just them look in post and it'll feel cheap or something. But, it's a little scary to go there, and I was just begging for the opportunity to do it on film.
Yeah, and you shot 35 and 16, right?
Yeah, but it's 35 2 perf. I didn't want to do anamorphic, just because the 4 perf would have been too clean. Like the idea was like, let's shoot film to really get the film thing out of it. I didn't want to clean it up too much either in post. Like we really wanted that texture. And the Super 16 stuff was Bolex, just because I wanted to add these seasons shifting. And I lived in the house that we were shooting in, which was a whole thing on its own. But I was able to, it was the house I had been renting for the show. I didn't know that we were going to shoot there. Then the production designer surprised me with that idea, which was, I thank him now.
It's so indie filmmaking on like the biggest show.
But we wanted it to feel, we're just going to shoot in my house, guys. I got this.
Just some 16 millimeter on the weekend.
I had a Bolex that my gaffer, because I went around asking anyone, does anyone have like a Bolex I can borrow? I didn't want to bother production with this. Already you have to get approval to shoot on film, and that's a whole thing. But I just found a Bolex. My gaffer had it, perfect set. I got my assistant to get me some Ektachrome Super 16, and I basically was shooting on the weekends at home. I was making like time lapses with the Bolex, and I had forgotten, because film 1 at Concordia where I went to school, that's how we made our first movies, was with Bolexes. So I was back in that headspace watching YouTube videos on how to work the thing.
The best stuff is always when we get like back to basics, when it's like back to film school.
But that was the only way to show time passing by in this couple, So the fact that I lived there, that he had, everything kind of worked out.
It reminded me, was there a specific reference for that Bolex? Because it reminded me so much of that experimental filmmaker Jonas Mekas, who did so much incredible in-camera shooting with Bolexes, like in-camera editing.
There is one Bolex reference, but I didn't shoot it on a Bolex. But so there's a sequence that's an actual time-lapse hyperlapse that we did where we go from Gemma's suite and then we're in the hallways and it's like black and I kind of wanted it to be a little bit of like a black and white Japanese horror style. And we go to another floor, which is like Mark's floor. So we go from Gemma's floor to his floor and find him at this dresser. And sorry, it might sound confusing as I'm explaining it, but
the whole show is confusing. I love it.
But that sequence was inspired by a hyperlapse that was shot on a Bolex in Montreal that I just found on YouTube, but I can't remember who the director is. But that if you Google hyperlapse Montreal winter, you'll find it, and it's amazing.
I'm going to look it up. Just to go backwards a minute and just talk a little bit about your prep. I don't know how much time we have left, but how your prep.
Because we're here all day, right?
Yeah, we're here, right? We'll just keep going. Wrap it up. Copy that. I think she went like this. Stretch it out. I guess that's it. All right, cool. Well, I just want to say congratulations to you both.
It's so short.
You guys can ask me about prep later.